Into our first segment. Our first segment today is going to be talking about work and business. And I think it would be a good opportunity for us to share a bit about what we all do here and kind of how our situations are set up and maybe how that compares to the kind of typical foreigner in Korea work experience and how we kind of view our situation from a pros and cons standpoint. So why don't we just go down the line here, Valentin? You want to kick us off and tell us a bit about your situation and how you think it compares to the typical foreigner experience in Korea?
Sure. So for me, actually, I didn't really have much choice when I came to Korea, because most foreigners who actually come to Korea, the easy job is like being an English teacher, but you cannot be an English teacher if you're not a native speaker, right? Even though you've studied for a long time and you prove like whatever paper you prove like how good your English is, it's not working at all. And I actually tried, it didn't work, and then I tried to find some like French teaching positions. It was also really hard, so I started off doing some part-times, teaching privately and also...
Legally, of course.
Sorry, what?
Legally, of course.
Legally, of course, yeah. That's the thing in Korea, it's not very legal. Even for Koreans, it's not very legal to do private teaching because the government don't support that.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway, but in the end, I had to find a job in a company if I wanted to stay for a longer time in Korea. I had no choice but to find a job in the company to get the working visa. So I had no choice but to, I sent a bunch of applications. So I work in IT and software development. Luckily I found one job, and after that I moved to a few different companies, but always in the tech, like web development and software development field. And now I'm still working in a company. I've been in that company for a long time now, actually. I reached 4 years, which is pretty good in Korea. Before I used to change a job every year because I was not really happy, because Korean working culture is really hard and intense. A lot of people know that already, but it's true. It's really intense, and you need some time to get used to it. The long hours and the hierarchy things. It's really hard, but you get used to it. I mean, I'm used to it now, and I think sometimes I'm actually more Korean than some Koreans. Right?
I've noticed that.
So I'm very happy with that. I don't think I would ever had found this kind of job back in Switzerland, because, as you know, Korea, the technology is well developed compared to European or Western countries. My job is really unique. I say I'm a software web developer, but it's a little bit more than that. We do some media art experience. It's really hard to explain, but anyway, it's something that I wouldn't have found in Switzerland. So I'm very happy with that, and I'm very happy in my job, to be honest. I mean, of course there are a lot of crap, everyday things that I regret, like I mentioned it before, the hierarchy thing, where your boss has all the power, and if you come up with an ID, it's basically not really yours. They always take credit for the best IDs you've had in the long hours. But anyway, overall, I'm very happy, and I'm glad now that I'm not teaching English, because I know the people who, I know that some of my friends who teach English, they regret sometimes not being immersed more in the current culture, and also having the opportunity to speak Korean a little bit, because if you don't have any opportunity to speak Korean at work, then in your family, sometimes with your in-laws, but anyway, even if you were speaking Korean really well, the communication sometimes with the in-laws are not that great. It's
sometimes that's better though.
Sometimes it's better to pretend to not understand very well.
A bit of a free pass.
Right?
So I'm tired, I don't understand anymore, sorry. But I'm very happy for that point. If I came to Korea, it's because I also wanted to learn more about the culture, and I wanted to have some Korean colleagues. And right now, I'm still, sometimes part of me want to work for an international company, and maybe because now I'm not using my my language abilities at all. I
Yeah.
speak French, English, and Korean, but I'm not using any of that. I'm just fully speaking Korean at work, and I feel like it's such. I mean, not so many people have those skills. I mean, and it's a little bit of a shame not using that. So I feel like if I was working for an international company, I could maybe have like a company based in Switzerland that I don't
Yeah.
know, they need a bridge with Korea, and I
Yeah.
can do the translation and work. I mean, I think that'd be great, but I'd be losing that maybe that Korean company culture. But yeah, anyway, very happy. But it's also very hard for me to compare what would it be back in Switzerland, because I worked in Switzerland for like 4 or 5 years, but as a student slash worker, like we have those curriculum in Switzerland that maybe don't really exist in the other countries. But anyway, we can work and study at the same time. So it's not like full-time working, but anyway, I don't have like much experience in Switzerland, so it's hard for me to like actually really compare now, like what it would be like for me now in Switzerland.
Right.
I would assume you'd be a banker, correct?
No, no, I'd probably be working also in the same field, but yeah, I don't know exactly
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
would be
no.
different, to be honest.
Probably
Yeah.
be less opportunity. Like you can, there's a lot of different similar companies in Korea, so yeah, you can
Yeah.
try different stuff, I guess, here.
I mean, I remember that back in Switzerland, some of my colleagues, they wanted to change their job, but they were really struggling, like
Right.
finding
Yeah.
another job in tech.
Yeah.
I know like many countries they suffer from like it's hard to find a new job, but not in tech. Usually tech people,
Yeah.
most countries, they can get a job like
Right.
within a week. And I know in Korea, if I quit tomorrow, the week after, if I want to, I would be able to find another job. But in Switzerland, I remember like my colleagues struggling finding jobs.
Mhm.
So yeah, definitely more opportunities here, and yeah, so that's
Yeah.
my working experience.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I'll try to put what Don does in layman's terms, because I don't understand the technical part. If you come to Korea and you happen to go to like a museum or an exhibition that has a really cool interactive like media element, that's like one of the things this company does, is really cool stuff. So I think to your point about Korea and Korean technology being developed, that's why, right? Is that the like museums, all the things here, they're so invested in like making really great experiences that
Right.
there's just there's a ton of work. That's really cool.
I I see something from the chat that something not raised yet is what is it to be a foreigner in a current company? Like Guillaume is saying that there's clearly advantages being a foreigner in a current company.
Yeah.
You don't want to use that card very often because you want to be like the others, and you want to be treated like
Yeah.
equally like the others. But definitely we also, even though we also pull like super long hours sometimes, but there's also a little bit of a foreigner card you can play sometimes, where you don't have to respect the current culture as much as the other do. Like those, we call like nunchi in the current companies, is like knowing what the other think. There's no word like this in English,
Yeah.
but it's like basically if your manager does not leave work, you
Yeah.
cannot leave work before your manager, even though you finished your own work,
Right.
which is.
It's crazy.
In the Western working world, that's kind of crazy. Yeah.
But even Koreans, they don't like this so much these days anymore, and it's changing. And I guess it's just a generation problem also. Younger generation, current generation will try to change this
Well,
probably.
when I used to work at a cosmetic company before opening my place, and because it was a lot smaller, nunchi still existed like big time there. So even though I was a foreigner, like if my boss was still there, it was really uncomfortable to leave early. So, but I think like it all just depends by company. Is all different, but definitely for smaller companies, like I think nunchi is still a big thing. Like big companies, they normally just turn off. They've got they'll turn off the computers at 6 o'clock or something, and most the working conditions are pretty good now, and I think for your place it's pretty good. Like it's nice. How about yourself, Dan? You want to explain a little bit more about what you do, get up to?
Sure. So I work in digital marketing for B2B, which is business to business. So you can think of that as like software, basically, marketing software solutions to other businesses. I started out in the US working remotely, and the first few years in Korea, I was just working remotely still for a US company, and then was able to transition over to being hired by a Korean company, And so now, as of today, I'm technically hired through a Korean company. I work for the Korean branch of a company, but most of my direct reporting happens to the US or the UK, or sorry, not the UK, that was a previous company, US or Australia. And so yeah, I do the marketing for basically the Asia Pacific region. I'm kind of in a happy Goldilocks zone, I think, in that like I work for a Korean company, I get the Korean pension and different things, but since my managers are in foreign countries, I get more flexibility on like holidays and stuff, kind of the more Western approach to days off and benefits, which is nice. So I think my situation is somewhat unique. I think it would be difficult to find this it would be difficult to be in Korea with my kind of role if you weren't on like an F6 visa, so a spouse visa. So I have the flexibility. I don't need a sponsor, Korean sponsor for a company. And then I think digital marketing is one of probably IT. You could find something like that, digital marketing, but the kind of industries where you can do a fully remote job are limited. I think my only con would just be I've been working from home for 4 years. It gets very lonely.
Right.
Just not having colleagues and not going into an office, you kind of miss that interaction.
At least now, because you're working for a Korean company, you're working normal hours though, right? Because I remember before you had to work like crazy hours during the morning or night.
Yeah, when I first came over, I wasn't doing the Asian region marketing. I was still working with American clients. So I was doing like odd hours, kind of calls in the middle of the night or in the morning, and that was about a year and a half. It was difficult.
And that makes it hard to experience career as well, because you're always tired during the daytime and you just can't be bothered to go anywhere or do anything maybe.
It was the idea. I didn't think it would be as big of a deal as it was. My wife, of course, is always right, and she's like, "You're not gonna like this," and I'm like, "It'll be fine." And I'm thinking I work for 4 hours in the morning, and then I have the whole day off until I have to work again in the evening. But then what happened is it felt like when you have homework on the weekend in school, every day I would like stop working, but I knew 8 hours later, that same day I'd have to start working again. So when you're out doing something in the back of your head, you're like, but in a few hours I have to go work again.
Yeah.
And that was every single day. So that was
Psychologically,
brutal. Psychologically, you never have a break.
Right.
But now it's great. Yeah, now I work just normal hours. I think, I have slightly early calls because I work with people in Australia who are 2 hours ahead, but it's really not bad. So yeah, it's good.
What about the fact that you have to deal with other countries for your paying taxes and salaries and stuff like?
Probably doesn't pay any.
No, I do. We do that. Actually, no, that's a good question, and it was complicated because the U.S. especially has some. They're one of the only countries where even if you live in a foreign country,
you still gotta pay tax.
Yeah, live and work in a foreign country, you still need to pay and report U.S. taxes.
It's crazy to say
that. To be fair, there's a large exclusion window. It's called foreign earned income, not to get into the details, but it's the paperwork really. It's not the money. You don't really have to pay very much money unless you make a lot.
Yeah.
It's that you just have to do all this paperwork. So yeah, that was a big thing. I would recommend to anyone in a similar situation, just go hire an accountant.
Yeah.
Like in Korea especially, it wasn't too much. I think it was 100,000 won, which is equivalent of $90, to just have someone make sure all the paperwork's filed correctly. That totally worth it, because otherwise it's, especially for a U.S. citizen, it's really complicated.
You don't want to miss your tax in the U.S. They'll get your
and that's the thing about a lot of countries. I think most countries are this way, where you won't know right away you filed it wrong.
Right.
It's like 5 years later, they're like, "Oh, you've been filing wrong for 5 years," and it's so yeah. But that was a consideration which people don't always think about, is the tax situation is different. Retirement accounts, things like that, all of that works differently. So
for me, that would be too much stress. I don't want to have anything to do with my home country anymore. Like
I would like
having to deal with.
I would like that also,
but really having to deal with both countries. I never had to do it, because when I left Switzerland, I told the country, the government, that I was leaving Switzerland for good.
Yeah.
So I don't pay health insurance or.
But if you were to go back to this, if you don't pay health insurance,
that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, it's the same in the UK. I've been delaying it for about 8 years now, so I really need to start paying it. So you have to do a certain amount, I think 40 years of payment to be able to eligible for your state pension and your health insurance.
But it wouldn't be that much of a nightmare, because if I was going back to Switzerland one day, first all my health insurance, I could keep the current ones because they're better than Switzerland anyway.
Right.
So I'll keep my current health insurances. And as for my pension, it would be fucked, but whatever, like I prefer to have my own. Anyway, most countries now, like they struggle, like they don't know if when we'll get to 65, if we'll get anything from the government. So
Yeah. We'll be
it's better
65.
to-
We've got 75 probably by the time we.
Yeah.
get
I had the choice actually to keep like paying for like the pension fund,
Yeah.
like the I
Yeah.
don't know, the retirement pension
Yeah.
thingy. But I didn't because I was like, no, I cannot like even like 1,000 per year. I was like, no way. Like I better be putting this on
Yeah.
Ethereum or something.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Crypto made its first mention on
Yeah.
episode 2. But that's actually a point that's if people who are in Korea or aren't sure, it's worth looking into is what your tax treaty is between your country and Korea. So for me in the US, there's actually a treaty, right, that same sort of thing. You have to have a minimum number of hours worked to qualify for your full vesting in like Social
Yeah,
Security in America,
yeah.
which is the retirement. We have a treaty, so like my hours worked for a Korean company should count against the Social Security hours. So it's kind of like it's equal.
Right.
Again, very
It's
complicated.
difficult, that,
I
isn't it?
guarantee
Yeah.
you in like 15 years, I'll be going and getting another accountant to look into that once we get closer to retirement age. But that is as I understand it. But it's really complicated to understand, like, will you be giving up your, if you're coming to Korea for not a permanent stay, but a long-term stay, and you're eventually planning to go home, you really do need to look into, like,
Yeah.
are you actually right below the threshold? Because it's like 10 years of work in the US
Right.
to be fully vested. And most people don't consider it because the mass majority of people just work the whole life in the US. Don't even
Yeah.
think about that. But if you were to leave Korea 9 years with work to a country that doesn't have a treaty and come back when you're 60,
Yeah.
you may have to work another few years to qualify for your full retirement, which is
Yeah.
complicated. Yeah.
Can you, if you leave Korea, can you take the whatever you like
Pension.
the pension?
US can.
US can, but you cannot.
I can't.
I
We don't have a treaty. Do Swiss have a treaty? Yeah. we're
Oh yeah,
fucked.
you have to leave a big chunk, right?
You have to wait till I'm 65. If I'm here when
And
I'm
come
65,
back.
I can get my pension.
Yeah.
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 But a lot of like people who come for a couple of years, it's money just gone because they're never
Yeah.
gonna come back to Korea. Like,
I mean, to be fair, it's not big money. I mean, like now,
Yeah, but-
I've been in Korea for 7 years, but I've been working for 5 or 6
Yeah.
maybe, and it's like something like 15K.
yeah.
Ooh,
Well, when I
Mr.
was,
Moneybags over here, not big money. 15K.
I mean,
I know what you mean in the big
Jesus.
picture.
That's a retirement, like,
Yeah.
I mean, that should support you for,
No.
I don't know how many years, but
I
at
think
least
the-
15 to 20
Right,
years.
it's the time, like, it's that 30 years from now, 15K, if the markets don't crash, everything should turn into
Yeah.
more. But
This brings me
yeah.
on to kind of like about me, because when I started here, like about the treaty thing, when
Yeah.
I was teaching, so I actually told the school, I said to them, just don't pay my, I don't want to pay tax, because in Korea you pay
I
half.
cut that sign back out.
No,
I just don't want to pay
no,
tax.
not tax. Sorry, not tax. I mean pension. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because they pay half and I pay half.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm not gonna get it back anyway. So I said to them, just don't pay it. But I didn't realize in Korea it's like the 4 package things that includes your tax, your health insurance, and everything.
You got
So I
nothing?
don't know if that during that time where I was covered for health insurance and everything, because like I think they just decided to cut. They didn't tell me that at all.
Lewis is going to get audited after this. Like, oh, we noticed you didn't pay tax for the first 2 years in Korea.
It's only for a year.
But why don't you, that's a good segue, tell us about your situation.
Yeah, so when I came, I originally was teaching. I did that for, I taught for eight months at one school, and then it closed down. The guy, I blame the guy before me. He put it in a horrible situation, and then they were on the last legs. And then I taught at another school for a year, and then that was when I'd already met my wife, but I was like thinking I want to stay in Korea, but I want to do something different. I mean, teaching was I didn't mind it at all, and something I would even maybe go back to. It's if you get the right setup, you can make good money teaching, and it's actually, it's pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
But so I did my masters here for 2 years, and that's a whole different topic. We can get into that, like my living conditions. I lost, like, I'm already a skinny, scrawny guy, but like I lost so much weight. I was pretty much ill. Anyway, so I studied for 2 years, and then after that, I majored in finance, but I thought, oh great, 2 years I'm going to be able to study Korean, and my Korean's going to be awesome, and I'll just walk into a job. But no, like what you'll find is that there's a lot of students here, and they come through the system where they'll do 4 years they'll do the bachelor's, but they do a whole year learning Korean before that. It's all they get paid by scholarship. So when I was going for interviews, their Korean was amazing. So I was like really struggling against a lot of other candidates. So anyway, yeah, finance got chucked out the window, and I ended up at a cosmetic company for a couple of years, and now they moved. So I was like, great, it's my chance to get away from Nunchi. As Valentin was saying earlier, try and get away from the Korean culture, and I just wanted to be my own boss. So yeah, I've opened up my own place about 2.5 years ago, and as you know, it's,
what type of place is it?
I don't even know really. What are we? We're like a cafe during the day, and then at night time like a bar. So like it's a little bit different. We're not like a traditional bar. Our place is like on the 4th floor, so we're like in this rundown building. I think it's probably one of the oldest buildings in Korea. You know, everything's modern here, but we're at this old shoddy building, and then we've like decorated like our room is like all English antiques and stuff, and like little cafes. So yeah, so been doing that for 2.5 years, and it's been good. Yeah, it's all right.
Nice. And actually, I know that there was